Alright. Alright. Alright, guys. So. Today we're going to be talking about probably one of the scariest horror films I've seen since Ridley Scott's 1979 horror. Probably one of the scariest horror films I've seen since Ridley Scott's 1979 sci-fi horror classic Alien, Krampus. The movie basically tells the story of a dysfunctional family known as the Engels, whose middle child Max inflict to, like the description said. And basically, if you read the description of the video, the Krampus basically tells the story. If you read the description, basically Krampus is one of the scariest horror films I've seen since Ridley Scott's 1979 sci-fi horror classic Alien, which basically terrified audiences throughout the world. And basically, Krampus tells the story of a dysfunctional family called the Engels, whose middle child Max is basically enjoys inflicting pain and suffering on others.
Jacob.
I'm doing a movie review right now.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Basically, Krampus tells the story of a dysfunctional family called the Engels, whose middle son Max enjoys inflicting pain and suffering on others. But this time around, Max accidentally and intentionally inflicts pain and suffering on the wrong people, and unfortunately this time it's around the holidays, and during a brawl during this time around, Max gets in a brawl with his older cousins. Gets in a brawl with his older cousins at a Christmas dinner over a letter to Santa, and in which he publicly declares how much he dreads his family and the holidays in general. Upon learning this, Santa sent St. Nicholas, which we commonly refer to as Santa, sends an ancient demonic entity known as the Krampus to punish Max and his entire family, and which the entity basically hunts Max and his entire family down to punish them one by one. If this story sounds kind of familiar, and if this story sounds kind of familiar, it's probably because, the Krampus is and if you don't know what the Krampus is, basically the Krampus is an ancient demonic entity. Basically the Krampus is an ancient demonic entity and force that was worshipped in ancient Alpine pagan traditions in Europe, specifically the Alps in Germany's Bavaria region. And every year there is a certain night. There's a night in the winter months called Krampusnacht, in which men dressed in Krampus costumes will parade through the streets, scaring children into behaving themselves, warning them that if they don't behave, the Krampus will come after them. So, in some ways, Krampus celebrations are still held in some parts of the world, specifically Europe. So, that's the other thing I forgot to mention. So, basically, it's not uncommon for Krampuses to appear in modern stories in different parts of the world, specifically in video games and modern movies.